as well. So those killed, it varies from 5 lakhs to over 10 lakhs. Some non-governmental sources also estimated in between 15 to 20 lakhs. So keeping aside all these numbers, the government of India decided on 14th decided to observe 14th August as Partition Horrors Remembrance Day since 2021, given a clarion call by the Prime Minister of India. So this occasion is to commemorate the sufferings and sacrifices of millions of Indians during the partition, which happened roughly in 1947. But the mass migration of population across the border, some of the massive riots that unfolded after it, and which led to not only the killing of one specific faith, the killings of Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims on both sides of the border, and almost 3 crore people were affected by the population were affected by the partition, and the kind of cross migration that happened. Some million plus precious human lives are lost. It is considered as one of the greatest tragedy ever occurred at a single go in human history. So, why we are observing this occasion, right? And what is the intention behind it? Are we going to remember the sacrifices? Are we going to remember the sufferings? So the purpose behind observing this day is to remind the people and the next generation who had no idea about what happened then, and then how with a lot of sacrifices and a lot of sufferings of the optimum level India achieved independence. So those sufferings and sacrifices of millions of Indians should remove the poison which still gets all of us affected. So the poison of social division, disharmony, and strengthening the spirit of oneness is one call, and then establishing social harmony and human empowerment as well. So therefore this day, or therefore Partition Horror Remembrance Day. So I was fortunate last year to visit the Partition Museum in Amritsar. So lot of historical analysis is there, and everything was chronicled there in the Partition Museum. So as history goes, the demand for a separate nation for Muslims was the initial route by various Muslim leaders time and again, and maybe for the first time ever, Sir Muhammad Iqbal, in a Muslim League conference in Allahabad that happened in 1930, for the first time he articulated the idea of a Muslim nation within the peripheral limit or within the limits of Indian territory. So this is for the first time. So therefore the term also first got coined, Pakistan. Pak means Pavitra, right? So it was coined by Chaudhry Rahmat Ali in 1930s, when again he was sitting in his dorm room in Cambridge University. So the Muslim League led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah then later on called for the creation of a separate country when the situation changed. So this phenomenon of Pakistan, or the divine land that we call, they had a resolution in Muslim League in Lahore on 23rd March 1940. So we famously know it as the Lahore Declaration. So a lot of differences first, some pressure from outside, the people who were ruling us second, and then some of the situational demands. All these accumulated together made us to believe someday that India, a land of unity, a land of unification out of all kinds of diversity, no one has imagined that it's going to not only be bifurcated but trifurcated. So partition is all about the trifurcation of a land or the civilization which has long drawn itself from the value system of unification, and it's the only state, only independent sovereign state which has not went out of its own geographical limits to acquire another land. This is the value system we all possess. But this is for the first time the situational compulsion or pressurization made us to get trifurcated. So the first partition scheme was outlined in April 1947, as you all know through the historical accounts. Then Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first prime minister who later on becomes, who was completely non-agreeable to this. So some of the revised schemes were made and it was sent to London, and the British cabinet finally approved it. So on 4th June 1947, the scheme of partition of India was announced by the last Viceroy of India, Lord Mountbatten. So he gave two notes to both Nehru and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and they announced it on All India Radio. That has happened. These are the happenings that was almost 2-3 months before the real independence of India happened. So the partition of India took effect on 14th August 1947, the day when Pakistan celebrates its Independence Day. So 2 days after independence, on 17th August 1947, there was a boundary commission already mandated by the British cabinet, headed by a famous British jurist, Cyril Radcliffe. So he announced the map of Punjab and Bengal to be divided into India and Pakistan. So these things unfolded during the independence of India, activities which happened during the late part of 1946 and the early first part of 1947. So when we talk about partition and then shifting of people and then the land barriers which caused us to get divided, which are famously the border lines, right? Some of the border lines across the globe are invisible, and the most intangible and the most protected border lines that we badly boast of, the borderline between India and Pakistan, right? So again, drawing some parallels from history, when British rule began in India almost after the Sepoy Mutiny, and then the British East India Company got its power dues to be shifted to the British Parliament. So from 1858 onwards, as a consequence of Indian Mutiny, the paramountry of the East India Company got demolished. So direct rule was intended. So this has some kind of repercussions towards the early part of 20th century by, or if I can exactly point out, almost by 1920s, some of the non-cooperation and civil disobedience movements were already taking place. So the call for self-governance in a very mild form was also taking shape, or kind of brewing in the minds of the leaders that we had. So in 1930s, the Indian National Congress, or the Congress Party led by Jawaharlal Nehru, promulgated the Purna Swaraj resolution, calling for a complete independence. So from there on, maybe I can call it as a milestone. From there on, the Muslim League started mm, trying to attract some of the affinities towards them, or maybe the power structure should be divided according to their thought process. So by 1930, again, a number of Indian Muslims had begun to think in terms of statehood for their minority community, separate from a state with a Hindu majority. Although many of the most important leaders of the Muslim community, like Muhammad Ali Jinnah or Aga Khan III and all that, they continued to vouch for a single federation of all Indian provinces put together. So this was happening all around the beginning of the 20th century. So Jinnah was mostly secular. He always talks about unity, uniformity, and also during the several kinds of deliberations of All India Muslim League, he had a kind of hope that the leadership of the Congress Party would accommodate Muslims, eventually accommodate Muslims in all the decision makings, and then if someday India achieves independence, then the power structure would be equally divided. This was his kind of aspiration from the whole state. So, but the accommodation of Muslims, Hindu bias in some of the superstructures of the Indian National Congress, or some of the documents say. Okay, for example, if I'll be giving some examples, then Freedom at Midnight, right? The book also talks about some of the happenings, or maybe Gurinder Chadha very rightly in her movie The Viceroy's House also talks about all these happenings which got chronicled during that time and which pressurized for bifurcation of something, not territory, but something, maybe a separate cabinet or a bivariant cabinet, or maybe a separate house within the premises of the parliament, anything like that sort of. But just kind of unimaginable on anyone's part that the land would be divided. This was not imagined by anyone, including Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, by 1930s. So the later on, almost the 2.5 decades of development or the change of thought process kind of rattled everything. So this is the kind of unfolding of events during the the happenings. So the League, the Muslim League, tried to demonstrate how Congress ministries were kind of insensitive to the Muslim demands or maybe appeals for job, maybe some of the minority population vouching for other communities, right? Other communities who are getting represented, but Muslims are mostly neglected. Some kind of thought process came to their mind. So as well as for the redressal of grievances and partiality towards the Hindu majority in getting some posh jobs, this kind of thought process got brewed inside the premises of Indian National Congress. So some of the British leadership would also be responsible for this. For example, the period of governance from 1936 to 1943, Viceroy Lord Linlithgow. Okay, so this was the time when some of his norms of governance, the divide got intensified. So he was very much rude to inform the Indian political leaders and the populace that they were at war with Germany. India is at war with Germany, and Hindus and Muslim leaders should split on whether to support the war effort or not, because the mechanism of warfare and their support systems are quite different. So they should decide separately whether to wage a war with Germany or not. So the first meeting henceforth of the Muslim League after the outbreak of World War II was held in March 1940 in Punjab's ancient capital, Punjab. That's the ancient capital of Lahore. So the famous Lahore Resolution took place then, later known as also known as the Pakistan Resolution, was passed by the largest gathering of League delegates. Just one day after Jinnah informed something very curious, very unique to their followers. Okay, because Ali Jinnah has never talked about some of the separatist thoughts till then. Okay, so most of the direct followers of Muhammad Ali Jinnah and then some of the Muslim League members made a statement. Okay, that I quote: "The problem of India is not of an intercommunal, but it manifests some of an international character channelized into the domestic deliberations. Therefore, with the largest majority, the Muslim League resolved, therefore, that any future constitutional plan proposed by the British for India would not be acceptable to the Muslims, I again quote, unless it was so designed that the Muslim majority areas of India's northwestern and eastern zones were grouped to constitute independent states, in which the constituent units shall be two demands, autonomous and sovereign in nature, on the basis of faith, on the basis of religion." First time they took a decision. So quite obviously, the rifts deepened further when the Congress Party launched the Quit India movement in 1942. So the Muslim League and Muslim leaders were of the opinion that they were not consulted properly. So the call for immediate independence and British withdrawal, Muslim League opposed the call because, according to them, according to the Islamic population or some of the leadership they had, immediate independence would preclude autonomy for the Muslims. That was their thought process. So in the meanwhile, World War II ended. Britain has suffered a lot. So the demands for independence were very much loud and clear. So the 1945 British parliamentary victory of Clement Attlee there as the new Prime Minister, he placed to grant India independence and lending greater certainty to the British withdrawal from the subcontinent altogether. So the stakes were rising by that time, and the simmering Hindu-Muslim tensions also erupted. So Jinnah called for a direct action day on 16th August 1946, exactly 1 year before we achieved independence, which spiraled into communal rioting. This has also happened just 1 year before the independence. Some thousands got killed in what was later remembered as the Great Calcutta Killings. Okay, so the event was made soon with reprisal in a deeply divided Bengal, and the cycle of violence later spread to other parts of India. So the cycle of killing, the cycle of venom, the cycle of distrust has almost started 1 year before. So the 1947 March arrival of Lord Louis Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India, he arrives to India and to lead the British Empire, and then he has clear instruction to oversee the decolonization process of the country. Ideally, the devolution of power to an Indian government that would include the whole subcontinent and wide freedom of action to end the British Raj on whatever terms he was given some kind of independence he deems wisest. That was the kind of instruction Lord Mountbatten was given. So Mountbatten soon became convinced that the differences between the Muslim League and the Congress Party were irreconcilable, unable to resolve anything. So in the near term, the speed was of the essence because of the real risks of mutiny among Indian troops or the outbreak of a civil war. There were chances. So to contain all these things, the partition of the land was the only expedient option for independence, according to the understanding of Lord Louis Mountbatten. So Mountbatten plan henceforth for the partition of India was announced on 3rd June 1947. So British Parliament henceforth passed the Indian Independence Act on 18 July 1947, and with the order that the dominions of India and Pakistan would be demarcated by the midnight of 14th and 15th August 1947, and that the assets of the world's largest empire, which had been kind of integrated in countless ways for more than 2 centuries, be divided within a single month. Why I am stressing on all these things? Because every decision was taken in haste. There was so much kind of rush on the part of the British Empire. Things would be happening in a week. Let's decide in a month. Is it possible? Absolutely not. So while achieving the deadlines, racing to the dates of certainty, the Boundary Commission appointed by Lord Mountbatten worked desperately to partition Punjab and Bengal in such a way as to leave the maximum the intention of the commission, which was given a task to have a dividing line, maximum practical number of Muslims to the west of the former's new boundary and to the east of the latter's new boundary. Okay, so this was the trust kind of given to them. Okay, so there is a kind of equal representation. It consisted of 4 members from the Congress Party and 4 members from the Muslim League. Equal representation. So under the leadership of Radcliffe, and then again from the Muslim League, Cyril Radcliffe got some resistance first, but again things got salvaged. So, but the point is, Radcliffe was never before been to India. He had no idea about the geographical expanse, the terrains, the population divide, the kind of spirit we had, the kind of roots we inculcate within ourselves, where not only the religion we divide, but the racial kind of understanding we also derive from the great history we had. So with little agreement between the parties and the deadline looming, Radcliffe made the final determination of the borders, which satisfied no one and infuriated everyone. This is the kind of understanding by most of the leaders. Okay? So the division of Punjab and Bengal, the provinces with a slim Muslim majority, caused tremendous problems. The demographic distribution of these regions were kind of completely heterogeneous and diverse. So the new borders ran through the middle of villages, towns, fields, kitchens, houses, roofs, much more than that. When Pakistan was created, East and West Pakistan amazingly were separated by about 1,000 miles or almost 1,600 kilometers. That was the kind of uniqueness that happened. 2 territories together under a single unit, but have a separation of 1,600 kilometers. So what a mockery of separation they made. So the commission also effectively cut half the large Sikh population in Punjab. The western half of the community reacted with great concern over potential Muslim rule. Okay, so that was the fear in the minds of the Sikhs. The Mughal emperors had persecuted Sikh gurus in the 17th century, and they have not forgotten that. So the legacy of that persecution remained deeply felt in the minds and the vibes of the Sikhs. Although the commission had placed Amritsar, the Sikhs' most sacred city, under Indian dominion, but many other important Sikh shrines and landed estates were said to become part of Pakistan. So some Sikhs of Western Punjab tried initially to retain control over their estates by pushing out local Muslims, but they failed, substantially failed. But their attempts were also met with violent reprisals. So nearly the entirety of the Sikh community ultimately fled to areas that would become part of India. So that happened. So the transfer of power completed on 14th August in Pakistan and 15th August in India. So the transfer of power was intentionally given 2 days, so that held in between a day apart, so that Lord Mountbatten could attend both the ceremonies, both in Pakistan and India. Okay. So with the birth of two independent countries, the British Raj formally came to an end on 15th August 1947. So quite intentionally, the borders of the new countries were not published until 17th August. Okay. So quite rightfully, in his book, The Train to Pakistan, Khushwant Singh chronicles all the massacres, the tragedies, the train bogies full of bodies, a lot other things which were kind of humanly inexplainable. 2 days after the end of British rule, this set the stage for an immediate escalation of communal violence in areas around the new borders. So many ordinary people didn't understand what partition actually meant until they were in the middle of it. They felt it. Sometimes literally, if a border village was roughly even divided between Hindus and Muslims, one community could argue that the village rightly belonged to India or Pakistan, or maybe by driving out or killing members of the other community so that they can establish their village again. So people are actually confused. That where do I belong? Where should I go? And what's my future? So much kind of inaffinity and uncertainty loomed everyone. So as soon as the new borders were announced, roughly 1.5 crore Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs fled from their homes on one side of the newly demarcated borders to what they thought would be the shelter on the other side. So some people were able to take trains or buses from one country to another. Most were forced to flee on foot, joining refugee columns that stretched from miles and miles. Some of the queues, the queues of people having their baggages atop their head. These images also quite vibrantly or vividly capture the partisan memories we have till now. So these columns are the target of, again, these columns are the target of frequent ambushes, as were the trains that carried refugees across the new borders, people working tirelessly for days and nights and days. In the course of that tragic exodus of innocents, as many as almost 20 to 25 lakh people, unofficial sources, got killed. So families got devastated. Some of the family members remained. Some of the family members remained on the next side of the border. So some of the stories were like people were slaughtered like hell. You know, although scarce documentation left a wide range of estimates, but particularly about Sikhs, they settled astride Punjab's new division. So according to their population, okay, they suffered the highest proportion of casualties relative to their total numbers. The Sikhs were mostly affected. Then the Hindus, proportionate to their population, then the Muslims. I'm talking in terms of numbers, proportionate to their composite population. So violence indescribable. While the worst of the violence took place in the first 6 weeks of the partition, the consequences of those weeks played out for decades and decades. Even provinces that had initially escaped violence later saw outbreaks of conflict. For example, the Sindh province, it struggled to absorb large number of refugees, or we popularly call them, or it's a derogatory term, muhajirs. Okay, so the muhajirs from India, who, although Muslim, belong to different ethno-linguistic groups from the local population. So they were not easily absorbed by the majority of population there. So they remained outcast within their own community, faith or religion. Layer over layer of problems happened. Some of the disparities that arose from the hasty creation of Pakistan also led to a devastating war with Pakistan in 1971 between its eastern and western provinces later on, which resulted in the further independence of East Pakistan as Bangladesh. Must have heard about the Mukti Bahini and other Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So the territorial disputes between India and Pakistan continued. Pak-occupied Kashmir remained. Territorial disputes, also particularly the question of Kashmir region, also led to multiple wars, and the nuclear weaponization of both the states, global tensions, sanctions, everything. So, moreover, the tensions over the rights of Sikhs and the preservation of their communal integrity also have led to violent confrontation within the territory of India as well. Most notably, the storming of the Harmandir Sahib in 1984. Okay, the terrorists who were there, according to the version of the state, India, Harmandir Sahib, famously known as the Golden Temple in Amritsar, and the subsequent assassination of Indira Gandhi by her Sikh bodyguards. Okay, so the expunged later on effects of partition continues. So, what to do with these partition memories? I'll be concluding in another 2-3 minutes. So, these partition memories underscore absolutely what I understand from this discipline or the other kind of disciplines that I'm trained in. The fragility of human behavior, the fragility of humanity, human absorption, or the depths and heights of which we are capable of failing to and then ascending. Okay. So, whereas the popularly accepted narratives of partition stresses each of these factors and characterizes the violence as the neighbors turning against neighbors, right? And the bands of weapon-laden young men in the throes of a communal frenzy seeking out their next victims. Sometimes we understand that some days before they were part of our family. We belong to the same country, the same statehood, having the same spirit of nationalism and the same spirit of ethos of patriotism. But everything changed. So these remembrance, it may also help illuminate a period that has been difficult to make sense of, difficult to calculate and comprehend, but it also provides a challenge to the popular narratives of partition that something like this order must not happen again. So, as more scholars, students, maybe lay people, laymen would work with popular narratives, maybe new histories would be written where the balance of political workings of partition, having some lived human experiences, would be narrated further, and maybe some unifications also happen nowadays also. Some of the famous Bollywood movies also capture all these things. So, notably, my last understanding would be, I also hope on a very positive note, because I always stay optimist being a teacher. So it is hoped that there must be having millions of personal experiences and stories of tragedy, but as of late, Indian and Pakistani shared a Nobel Peace Prize together, and now the gold and silver are shared by Indian and a Pakistani together. So some positive news coming in. So these personal stories will not only provide a greater level of understanding of the lived experiences of partition, but they'll also serve to bridge the stories as well. The people again living beneath the border, but having the common roots and everything we had in commonalities. All sides of the borders, it may remind us that our commonalities are always greater than the differences we possess. Commonalities should always win, and differences should always lose. That's it. So thank you for giving me these precious moments of deliberation, and I look forward to expect some thoughts as well from other people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your excellent presentation. And the word of do not have anything to say, because this is unprecedented, as you highlighted the gist of these things, that it was a politically motivated, and it could have been avoided, but according to me it could have been avoided if both Indian Muslim League and Indian National Congress, if they could have agreed upon the common consensus which could have been taken place, but due to Muhammad Ali Jinnah and on the other side Jawaharlal Nehru, they had a differences on certain issues, and things could have been moved in a different angle or different direction, as it could have been the lives which people lost could have been saved. But it was, as you said, that it is unprecedented, and the situation was like this, and the situation was, you can say, uncontrollable, and of course, there are certain political pressure groups who are there, but thing was moving in a different direction, because this is a now situation is going on in we should not say anything because it will be highlighted in the sideline of the current situation which is taking place in Bangladesh. So one thing I realized, because as there is no difference, we are all human beings living in a small roof, whether it is a Pakistan, whether it is India, whether it is Bangladesh, whatever it may be, under common roof, we are all living as a family members. And we should have some kind of fraternity, brotherhood, then respect for each other, community, and respect for each other's the religious sentiments. We should not hurt each other's sentiments. That should be taken care of, and so that human, because as you know that human civilization is very very important, and we have to save the human civilization, because the carnage and the incident, the massacre which is taking place in the name of religion, in the name of certain on the issue of political ideology or political differences, it can be really, it is a really hot the masses who neither support this kind of things which happening in the current situation. So, okay, now many, many thanks to Dr. Hemant Kumar Das. Really, his presentation is so nice, because we are planning to have this kind of discussion in future also. If you have, sir, it is our humble request. If you have any time, please find out time for us, so that we can have this kind of debate and discussions, so that student can participate, and they can also share or they can, because this is the platform for the future generation. And now I would like to request our uh, Dr. Rajendra Gowda to give a brief report, and at the same time tender the vote of thanks, and so that we can conclude the webinar.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Good evening, respected Senior Director, Dr. Sangeeta Maji, and my colleagues from our Regional Center, Raipur. And this is the time to remind our sacrifice during the partitions of the nation. Actually, this partition was takes place because of the political issue only. But Muhammad Ali Jinnah wanted the Prime Minister of India, but regarding that only the government, the other some leaders wanted the Prime Minister of India, because in that only they are encouraged the partition of the nation into India and Pakistan. Then only they got the Prime Minister position something in India. This will take place at the time of the partition. The people are from living from India to Pakistan. Very few were left from here to there, but the majority of the Hindus are came from Pakistan to India. 1947, there are very little of the transportation coming from Pakistan into India. We have seen so many pictures. They are described and showed so many things were coming from Pakistan to India. Majority of people, Hindus, have sacrificed their lives and lost their families and their wealth. Everything they lost from there, even though they not reached properly to India. Majority of them lost their even their family members to coming back to India, and settlements are very difficult. That takes place in partition time. This is a very horrible time for the Hindus who is coming from Pakistan to India, because of not availing the proper transportation and not taking care of the but Hindu or Indian politicians from bringing from Pakistan to India. It's the main difficult what takes place in 1947. That is one thing. The government of India now taking care of the Hindus who are surviving outside the India to bring back to them India to settle in India, and we are taking the new act in the Parliament, that is the Citizenship Amendment Act, which is providing the citizenship who was India, other abroad India, we bring him to back to India. The government is taking more care because we are Hindus and Indians more secular. They are providing facilities to bring back our poor fathers from the outside. This is a really great effort from the government of India. And this is the time most of the families were sacrificed during the partitions. Really great explained by our today's resource persons, Dr. Hemant sir. Really, we are congratulating your elaborate lecture on this occasion. And also, this is the time to remember the sacrifice during the partition of India. Thank you very much for participating in this great opportunity. Thank you very much.
Dasa, do you want to share something?
No. Thank you so much, sir, for this opportunity, and I'd absolutely look forward to have such deliberations in future.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ma'am, can we conclude?
Hello? We may conclude?
Dasa, do you want to speak something?
No. No, I thought if there'd be any question answer session, then it will be fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Once again, on behalf of the Regional Center, on behalf of the staff, and on behalf of headquarters, I convey my gratefulness and thanks to Dr. Hemant Kumar Das, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Utkal University, Bhubaneswar, for sparing his valuable time and presenting excellent speech on the current situation. And I hope that we can understand the magic and the tragic incident which took place this aftermath of the partition of India. Thank you, sir. In future also, we are looking forward to your same kind of response. I hope within a short notice you have agreed, but we really thankful to you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Now we are going to conclude our this webinar, and in future also we will continue this kind of webinar, and we'll invite all the participants from the different colleges and universities, so that it will be more successful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you everyone.